Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you for the Tallgrass Prairie Center for inviting me out. Very excited to be here. Awesome sessions this morning, and excited to keep this conversation moving forward. So yeah, I see some of you already have your phones out. This is a tool to kind of help do some like live surveying. And I know not everyone, there's some awesome looking breakout sessions this afternoon. So would like to just try to hear from a lot of people here if I could, and hopefully this will inform the discussion we have at the breakout session, and then also moving forward too. I think I did this at a meeting in Michigan as well, and trying to hear from folks on like what a larger regional network to try to draw on expertise and whatnot from across the region can do to help like lift all boats, so to say, and kind of elevate all of our efforts in pursuing greater amounts and diversity of native plant materials. So did everyone get a chance to get a picture? And if not, no worries, we can do Q&A at the discussion session too, like normal people. So, and then, sorry, I need to, all right, so slide. So the structure of my talk, I will just preface it too, this is a very nascent, early effort. I was able to kind of start working on this January. Previous to this, my role at Chicago Botanic Garden for the past, I guess going on 7 years, it has been managing our conservation training program in partnership with a lot of the federal land management agencies. So, but doing a lot of native seed collection. So the Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, with the National Seeds of Success program. So with this talk, first, going to talk about some of our big picture driving questions, what we've learned from kind of starting to talk to folks about our effort here and why we're doing it. Secondly, going to talk a little bit about some of our initial and near future programs and activities for the network. And then third, going to kind of like dive in on one of those pieces of infrastructure at the Chicago Botanic Garden, our seed bank, and how we're looking to expand our work with it and hopefully drive some of the work in this space across the region. And there I've got our Fish and Wildlife Service definition of Region 3, the Midwest. We are working in concert with them, so we're not looking to exclude anyone that wants to join in. In terms of our collaborators that have joined into our email contact list and stuff, we've got people as far east as New York and as far west as, I want to say, Denver, definitely the Dakotas and Nebraska and Kansas. So let's see, moving on. This is our informal steering committee. Andrea and Kay at the Chicago Botanic Garden are helping me kind of lead this effort, and then Mary and Diana are both with Fish and Wildlife Service, our Midwest region based in Lansing, Michigan. I've worked with them the past 2 years in managing a Seeds of Success crew. First year in 2023 was working from basically southern Illinois up to northern Minnesota. They had a pretty far range. And then last year working across the state of Michigan and really trying to focus on species that Fish and Wildlife manage, like refuge managers, as well as partners that we were working with collecting on their lands, species that they are having a hard time sourcing for their restoration and management activities. And then Rory on the end there, she is with CBG and Northwestern University. She has a research assistantship with us, helping, and we're getting going on developing what projects she can kind of take leadership on. A quick plug, I know I don't have a ton of time, but just as some of you might not be familiar with Chicago Botanic Garden, we focus a lot on applied conservation and restoration questions compared to some other botanic gardens. I think we do focus on this question quite a bit, and we have about 15 conservation scientists, and then that do all kinds of different research, and then we have a graduate program with Northwestern University and several other conservation training programs, REU program, community science as well. So to kind of give a big picture step back, why these networks are kind of forming in different, and they look a little bit different across the country, but Kay Havens, who I mentioned on the previous slide, she was a member of this committee that delivered a report that was commissioned by the Bureau of Land Management, asking for a panel of experts to conduct an assessment on the native seed needs across the country and the current capacity. So if y'all haven't read it, it's a pretty great piece of work. In a nutshell, the report found that, this kind of common problem that I think a lot of us recognize with appropriate locally adapted wildland source native seeds really being not available in sufficient capacity. So, and I will preface too that this report was commissioned by the BLM, so it was a little bit more Western focused and put some of the blame on BLM and Department of Interior too, that there is some settling for non-appropriate seeds and materials for a lot of the big post-fire rehab and whatnot. And when you don't have that demand, you're not going to have the appropriate seeds available. So the diagram on the right there is really kind of shifting what we need, strong and consistent public sector demand with advanced planning and providing that technical assistance too with partners and whatnot, and then hopefully creating a robust seed industry that benefits everyone. And then part of that report too was a list of recommendations. Recommendation 2 being really federal land management agencies should be investing and participating in building regional networks that across the country that will help make native plant materials more available, more diverse, and more accessible, especially regional and local appropriate genotypes. So with this too, it's recognized that this came out in 2023, and we've all kind of been touching on federal investments and everything is pretty uncertain. So there are, this federal investment, even in places like the West where there's a lot of BLM land and federal land, even some of that is being thrown up into some uncertainty. So it is where I think places like nonprofits can help keep this work going and hopefully develop some grassroots networks and whatnot. So as part of that, Laura mentioned the National Native Seed Conference just a couple weeks ago. We knew we wanted to attend. We knew we wanted to learn from the community weavers that are connecting growers and end users together and really identifying gaps in their part of the world, or part of the country. So we developed a symposium, a panel of experts and coordinators. We were lucky enough to have Laura on there. And we learned, we were able to learn a lot from the panel, and then also the questions that came out of that. We're still digesting some of that. But we kind of settled on, as in our initial conversations with that team of panelists, we really kind of came up with 6 strengths of partnerships and themes that we asked our panelists to touch on, and really the overall theme being strength in working together, and so these networks can build resilience and hold knowledge as people change out of organizations, and these networks can serve as kind of that glue and keep the work moving forward, hold that institutional knowledge, building the trust and transparency and sharing risk, recognizing that public and private partnerships are really driving this work, working with farmers and everyone in between. We're kind of recognizing that there is livelihoods, and you're dealing with a lot of uncertainty with new crops and whatnot. So, having a network that has everyone on the same page, building in that trust and keeping everyone connected is important. And going along with that, clear and frequent communication. And then the bottom 2, I think, really kind of go hand in hand with articulating a shared values and mission, and then as there is strength in numbers, having a broad collective can really ensure focus on, our overall goal of benefiting native plants and ecosystems. So this is just a sampling real quick of our, panelists that we had on the symposium there. And it was really interesting to kind of hear, from different organizations as they're running these different structures, different drivers of demand. For instance, you have Nevada that is primarily federally managed and has a great deal of their demand driven by post-fire rehab. And then comparing that to a place like the Texas Native Seeds Group that, Texas is over 90% privately owned. They have got a lot of energy companies that are driving their seed demand. And then also kind of comparing the structures of these organizations. So the Rogue Native Plant Partnership in southwestern Oregon, very grassroots, very kind of community-driven. And then, these are large swaths of the country. Southeastern Grasslands Institute, still in their kind of early stages, I'd say kind of similar to us. They're doing a lot of seed collection, focusing on remnant grasslands throughout the Southeast. And then the Northeast Seed Network, kind of a larger network of networks and developing a lot of different working groups and committees and whatnot. So it was fascinating to learn from all these different folks. And our Q&A that we did during that panel too, we were able to touch on a couple of questions, but we had some awesome questions that I think will hopefully work with IAE that put on the conference, and they have this native seed network that they're looking to kind of capture all these networks across the country, and maybe this can kind of form a bit of an FAQ, or at least the start of an FAQ, as people are asking these questions and how networks can help and hopefully drive some of our direction here. So moving on to the second part of the talk now. Oh my gosh. So everyone's seen this diagram, I think, native plant materials development. We're in the early stages of kind of where are the most common bottlenecks, for everyone, for us in the Midwest, and what can we do to alleviate some of those? So this is our initial kind of like when we put out the call for this, and I've gone to a couple of meetings and whatnot, talking to different folks. This is our initial kind of map. It's increased a little bit here, but I've got about 205 cooperators, and what I'm envisioning, we've got the domain name purchased, and we're going to have a website going up, but this kind of being a web map, there's some great examples of it, but having it serve as a directory as well, and being able to see different cooperators, like what they do if they're a grower, if they conduct research, if they are, conduct restoration, purchase seeds, and having contact information and whatnot up there. Our overarching goal, looking to increase the availability of appropriate native plant materials in the region. How will we get there? Kind of distilled this down into four larger themes. So really facilitate, building connections and knowledge sharing. Looking to share and develop resources and infrastructure, conduct research and synthesis, and then hopefully, I would really love if we could get into some small scale increase, and we're not nearly the size that TPC, you guys doing things on a agricultural scale, but so in terms of current and near future efforts, I keep throwing these QR codes up, but that's our monthly newsletter with updates, looking to, like I said, website should be coming soon, and we'll look to put that directory and resources up there, host information about webinars, regular meetings. Last year we did have 2 webinar discussion Q&A things kind of happen organically because people in the network just kind of asked about it. If people had examples of the municipalities creating native plant nurseries and what their business planning looked like for that. So we were able to kind of source within the network and put on a webinar for that. And then also there was a fairly specific question about production of submerged aquatics. So we were able to kind of source within the network and conduct a webinar there. So also looking to synthesize previous surveys, maybe conduct some updated ones, and then explore different seed sharing and provide examples to folks. So real quick, too, we've kind of started back in 2011, kind of a long time ago. The funding for this project did dry up, but Windy City Harvest is our urban ag program at the Botanic Garden and just a few different facilities in Chicago. And we were looking at, I wasn't at the garden at this time, but the folks involved were looking at, what species could we, what species that were not on the market, in conjunction with growers getting their advice, that a niche that we could fill and produce certain plants in vacant lots in conjunction with Windy City Harvest. So we've got some starter species lists there, as well as with the Fish and Wildlife folks, like I mentioned, species that they're not able to source. So doing some preliminary kind of data gathering about why these species aren't available, and hopefully looking to revisit this effort. Another great project that we were able to kind of help out with, just as a cool example, there's a remnant population of sweetgrass in our remnant oak woodlands on site at the garden. We were able to work with the Kichikamen Indigenous Nations Museum in Evanston, just a bit south of the garden, to do some production, some increased production of the sweetgrass in a bog bed in our native plant nursery, and distribute that to community members. And then quickly to go into the seed bank at the garden. We've got the diagram here. Seed bank is kind of like removed almost, and I kind of want to emphasize that we're looking to get our collections a little bit more involved in the cycle. What can we do to look at our existing collections and get those out a little bit more, and then also do some further targeting of collections for species that aren't quite as available on the market and whatnot. So this is our, I don't think our accessions have actually been mapped since last week. I just did this quick mapping, but we've got the level 4 ecoregions there, and pretty big empty spot there through Iowa and up into southern Minnesota. So would be open to collaboration and whatnot. So our initial focus on the seed bank was targeting 545 species critical to restoration in the tallgrass prairie. Where we hit a lot of those goals. I think we need to take another look at this map and make sure and just kind of see where we need to focus. But there has been a shift in terms of our group of folks that are working on the seed bank, looking to exceptional habitats and sites and threatened species and whatnot to make sure we get those banked, and then also, in addition to these, that looking at gaps in the market and where we can help. So in the upcoming year, hoping to work with Illinois Natural History Survey and DNR, and then our rare plant monitoring program to make collections on Illinois state land, and then also some you might be familiar with the Driftless Area National Wildlife Refuge. Been in touch with them about making collections on some of the algific talus slopes and some of those boreal relics that might be in dire straits with climate change. So I think both of these efforts reflect kind of like the taking some action, and I know it kind of gets into a little bit of rare stuff, but I think that as a nonprofit in this world, it might be a part, or it might be a place where CBG can kind of have a niche in developing some of these species that aren't available for a variety of reasons, rarity being one of them. I will speed through. I talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're doing at the seed bank, trying to do more regular viability testing. So last year we were able to germinate 27-year-old seeds of Mead's milkweed. So excited about that. I think there was last reported we had one pod in Illinois left. So You're just trying to firm up our seed use policy, maybe assigning definitions to different accession types, working with the original owners of the land that we made collections on. Are they okay with things maybe entering the commercial sphere and stuff like that? So those are all conversations that we're having, and hoping to, with the overall goal of getting the seed bank used more and getting our material out there. So. And then just this is also just like last week, but doing some exploratory analysis, like our current accessions and some of the species that we had identified in that list that I mentioned with we've got the SOS, fish and wildlife gaps, as well as, gaps identified in that Windy City Harvest survey to growers and users. Be open to collaboration through the seed bank as well, and part of this larger network effort. And again, there's that QR code for signing up for the Constant Contact, is what it's called, just the email listserv, basically. And we'll be doing communication on there as well as through the website when we get it going. Thank you. Sorry to go over.